Welcome to Fox Soul's Black Report, your space for Black news, views, and opinions. Today is Tuesday, March 8th. I'm Seth Lemon.
I'm Blue Toulouse.
I'm Romeo.
I'm Demi Lobo. And on today's report, after more than 200 attempts, Congress finally makes lynching a federal crime. Meanwhile, President Biden has banned the import of any Russian oil. Why the commander-in-chief says defending freedom is going to cost a lot for Americans. Then there's evidence that Johnson & Johnson conducted science experiments on black prisoners. How the new revelations have come to light.
Plus, Instagram announces a new feature to ensure black creators get proper credit for their work. But how much money have black influencers lost out on? And Snoop salutes S. Dot, while Jay-Z said he'll be on to the next one. Is the NFL interfering with his Super Bowl halftime show?
We have all that and much more. This is Our Voice and Our Truth, so let's get it.
Congressman Bobby Rush's Emmett Till Anti-Lynching Act, it passed the U.S. Senate unanimously. And it now is going to head to President Biden's desk to be signed into law. Under the bill, and for the first time in U.S. history, lynching is a federal crime. Since 1900, more than 200 other attempts were made to codify lynching into federal law, but more than 6,500 black Americans were lynched between 1865 and 1950, according to the Equal Justice Initiative. What do we think about them taking so long to do this?
I mean, it's definitely taken a long time, but at first I was thinking back, Seth, to like, you know what, it's taking so long for this to come to light. Then I also said, you know, let's celebrate the small wins here, because this is a very, very, very big win. You know, Emmett Till was a nationwide story. The entire world knew about Emmett Till. And so I also feel like his family is going to feel some type of closure as well to this, knowing that even though he had to sadly and tragically and unfortunately pass in such an awful way, but to know that this bill now is going to set the tone for years to come, it does have to bring some relief.
Yeah, it does have to bring some relief, but now can we talk about it? Can we teach it? It's a part of history that needs to be told, right? You know, we talk about how the critical race theory, how they don't want to teach that to certain students. Well, this is something that should be taught all across the country and the world. What this mom had to go through, to have the courage to have an open casket after what her son went through. The bill is passed. It is a small win. You're right, Demi, but I really hope that we can teach this to the young generation.
Mm-hmm. And this victory should be the beginning of the conversation, not the end. So I hope anybody who sees this is not saying, you guys have got what you want, you can hush now. No, we have a lot more, and it's only the first shot in saying that we're going to take back our history.
Absolutely, Blue. We are going to speak it loud and proud. Now, breaking news now on the war in Ukraine. President Biden is now planning to ban Russian oil imports. It comes following pleas from Ukraine's president for the U.S. and other Western countries to cut off imports, hitting Russia's economy even harder than previous sanctions. 8%
has strong bipartisan support in the Congress, and I believe in the country. Americans have rallied to support their Ukrainian people and made it clear we will not be part of subsidizing Putin's war.
8% of last year's oil imports to the U.S. came from Russia. It's unclear how much this could impact the price that you are going to pay at the pump, but it's safe to say that gas prices will continue to rise. So the interesting thing about this is that Shell, they bought 100,000 tons of Russian oil. And so the president of Shell, he was like, you know what, I knew it was a bad idea, but he got it for, I don't know how much of a discount, but he got it for a really, really good discount. So he said, I'm going to go buy the oil, even though he knew it was a bad idea. So now he had to come and apologize for it. And so that he's saying now that they're going to cut off the oil, of course, but now he's saying that the rest of the oil that is like left over, the profits from the rest of the oil, it's going to give back to those who are fighting in Ukraine. So there's some good to come for this story, but he's like, I knew it was bad, but he didn't know if there was going to be another way to get oil. So he did what he said he had to do.
We don't get that much from Russia from the U.S. There are a lot of countries who are dependent upon oil from Russia. We're not. But any lack of supply, of course, with demand as high as it is, means the price is going to go up.
Yeah.
And we've already asked the U.S. government, being we, Saudi Arabia, to produce more oil, and they've kind of said no. And they've been talking to some South American countries like Venezuela as well. And now President Biden making this announcement today.
Yeah, a pretty powerful stand, right? If we have to do something, we have to let them know. We have to pinch them in their pockets. We have people over in Russia that are fighting, knowing what's wrong that what the country is doing, right? And they're paying the price for being arrested and all that. I love the fact that President Biden is saying, look, this is another way we can cut off money going to that place because they're doing the wrong thing. And matter of fact, I'm going to tell you, Well, we're about to do some more options when it comes to gas right now. Meanwhile, the U.S. is asking the Venezuelan government for help. A group of senior American officials flew to Venezuela over the weekend to discuss easing of sanctions on Venezuelan oil exports. Now, Venezuela has the largest oil deposits in the world. Before U.S. sanctions against the Maduro government, the United States bought oil from that country. Economists are in favor of buying Venezuelan oil. They say it will lower prices for oil and gas here, as well as make it easier for our country to do without Russia fuel. There is even word that the U.S. may ease sanctions with oil-rich Iran to bring prices down even further.
Meanwhile, in Ukraine, we are on the 13th day of Russian attacks. Ukrainian officials say that Russian aircraft bombarded cities with bombs in eastern and central Ukraine overnight, destroying residential buildings and a power plant. Meanwhile, packed buses and trains continue shuttling civilians to safety on the north and eastern sides of the country. This is Europe's worst refugee crisis since World War II. The United Nations is reporting that at least 2 million people so far have fled Ukraine.
Attorney Ben Crump and a group of international human rights activists are calling on the United Nations to condemn discrimination against African-American immigrants fleeing the Ukraine. The group is expected to send an appeal to the UN's High Commission on the elimination of racial discrimination. They want the panel to respond to reports of African immigrants being blocked from leaving war-torn Ukraine into nearby Poland. The lawyers say Polish border guards threaten to shoot Africans who try to cross over from the Ukraine.
Military and police investigators are trying to find a second person who broke into an Air Force base in Maryland. It happened just as Vice President Harris was returning to the base from Selma, Alabama on Sunday night. An armed 17-year-old male was taken into custody by police. He was arrested after police say he and another person in a vehicle drove through a security checkpoint at Joint Base Andrews. It happened just as the VP was switching from Air Force 2 to the Marine 2 helicopter. Prince George's County and Maryland State Police swarmed the base looking for the second person, but they were unable to locate them.
The highest-ranking Republican on the Senate Judiciary Committee is warning Democrats against Russian Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson confirmation hearings. Senior Chuck Grassley says vetting a Supreme Court nominee is serious business and should not be rushed. But when Amy Coney Barrett, the last high court nominee, was named by Donald Trump, it only took Republicans 30 days from her being named to being confirmed. Jackson's confirmation hearings are scheduled to begin March 21st. Why do we always have to go through this situation when it comes to people of color being acknowledged, being praised, and getting what they deserve? This black woman has earned it. She's one of the most qualified to be sitting in that situation. So, again, I just feel like there's backlash always has to come when it comes to people of color.
Absolutely. The backlash does come from people of color. And so, when you think about this, the normal vetting process is about 53 days. And so, when it's cut down to 24 days, of course, that's going to raise some eyebrows as to why is President Biden trying to rush her through. But also you think about what happened back to Merrick Garland. And so the Republicans, GOP, they come in and start moving stuff around. And then you look up and then even asking for her LSAT. So many things. The more time you give, the more time the Republicans get to kind of come in and try to switch things. So I'm totally fine with President Biden moving her in, getting her going ASAP.
I'm shocked that they're even taking this stance because we all know that when it was Trump's turn, he got somebody pushed in like 17 minutes. So I think that this is more than enough time. Speaking of precedent that's happened with the former president.
Yeah, I think Amy Coney Barrett was nominated with just 30 days.
Yes,
so.
days. So.
All right, moving right along here. The Supreme Court will not change district maps in Pennsylvania and North Carolina. Republicans in both states took the case to the high court after lower courts ruled the maps were gerrymandered and redrew them. Republicans say the court-drawn maps give Democrats one more seat in North Carolina, and it'll lead to more Democrats winning in Pennsylvania.
And a nonprofit group that raises money for the Democratic Party is trying to get Donald Trump's lawyers disbarred. Axios is reporting the 65 Project is going after the lawyers who filed post-2020 election lawsuits. Now, those suits attempted to challenge or throw out election results. The group has already filed 10 ethics complaints against the attorneys. Axios says the 65 Project plans to spend millions in an effort to target 111 lawyers in 26 states with TV commercials and newspaper ads.
Bill Barr says he would vote for Donald Trump again if he's nominated for president. And this is even after the former attorney general said he doesn't think that Trump should be the Republican nominee in 2024. Barr says the greatest threat to the U.S. are progressive Democrats. The former attorney general's book, it describes clashes he had with Trump about the results of the 2020 election. Interesting to see the former attorney general selling books called, what's the name of the book? It's like One Damn Thing After Another. And even with that book title, you still feel convinced that this is the man that you would vote for in 2024 to run for, to be president again. And you've said that he doesn't have the temperament, he doesn't have the responsibility. You're selling books based off of those statements right now, but you would vote for him again. I don't get it.
You know, it really just goes to show you that it doesn't matter the lens that former President Donald Trump takes, no matter how pathetic, no matter how awful, just incredibly, just an awful person Donald Trump can be, there are still people in this world that will still vote for him. And it blows my mind as well, Seth, as well, that he can do no wrong to some people.
I mean, it made it very clear. Bill Barr said he's responsible for January the 6th. Yet I will vote for him. I think he's just trying to keep that relationship with Donald Trump's base. I mean, because I think it's his base. He might be buying into maybe his books and things of that nature. Or maybe he wants to get back on board if Trump gets back in office. Not sure what the story is, but this sounds like a Trump puppet for sure. Always has been and probably always will be.
It sounds about white. Yeah, I think racism takes no days off. And this is just another sobering reminder that you could literally burn the Oval and you will still be voted back in if you have privilege.
You know, again, like back to his book. I mean, he said that, like we were saying here, that Trump is responsible for the insurrection. So why would that be a person that you would want in office again? What is it about Donald Trump? I don't understand his fan base. What is it that they want him? What makes him so desirable as president?
Sounds about white. I think that sums it up.
Man, that was pretty powerful, wasn't it?
No, I think that's a theme hashtag for the day.
Drop the mic on that.
All right, New York Attorney General Letitia James is blasting former Governor Andrew Cuomo after he blamed cancel culture for his downfall. Cuomo's statement was the first he'd made publicly since resigning from office. Cuomo was accused of numerous allegations of workplace sexual misconduct were levied against him. The former governor spoke at a black church in Brooklyn Sunday. James referred to Cuomo as a serial harasser who, quote, won't even spare a house of worship his lies. She went on to call him a sick and pathetic man. Now, Cuomo has launched a TV ad blitz portraying himself as a victim of political attacks led by James. The Attorney General led the investigation into charges of sexual harassment from women who worked with Cuomo. Political analysts suspect Cuomo may run for political office again. Cuomo also said CNN only fired his brother because it was afraid of the cancel culture mob.
A Tennessee GOP lawmaker is facing wire fraud charges. That news came shortly after she resigned from the State House yesterday. Lawyers for Robin Smith say they reached a plea deal with prosecutors, and they say Smith and two other lawmakers allegedly used a political consulting firm to funnel money to themselves. She is linked to disgraced former House Speaker Glenn Casada, and Casada resigned from office in 2019 after revelations that he exchanged sexually explicit texts about women with his chief of staff.
Florida's Surgeon General is going against the CDC and all established medical research by recommending parents not get their healthy children vaccinated for the COVID-19 virus. Dr. Joseph Lopatto made the controversial recommendation yesterday at a roundtable event organized by Governor Ron DeSantis. DeSantis has been a critic of mask and vaccine mandates.
One of the guys we had today said, you know, they've not been able to really identify someone who is truly healthy with no comorbidities, who've been under 18, you know, who have had a COVID death. Now, other people may disagree, but bottom line is this is a very small number of people that we're dealing with. And so that's just weighing the cost benefit. Individuals can make their own decision, though, on this, but I think the data is in line with what the Surgeon General recommended.
The CDC says children between 5 and 11 should be vaccinated. There have been 2 million kids within that age range who have contracted the virus, and almost 1,000 children a day were hospitalized in January alone. At the height of the Omicron variant surge, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki called Florida's health department's advice disturbing.
Fort Lauderdale's police chief is now fired after only being on the job for about 6 months. This comes after an investigation into several discrimination complaints surrounding Larry Scarrato. He was accused of making hiring and promotion decisions with the minority-first approach. Larry Scarrato was the city's first openly gay chief and comes from a mixed-race background. However, he's firing back at the investigation, claiming the report is built on hearsay.
New documents show Johnson & Johnson experimented on black prisoners when they were testing talcum powder. Starting in 1951, a University of Pennsylvania dermatologist hired by the company, Dr. Albert Killigman, he experimented on hundreds of black inmates inside a Massachusetts prison, reportedly injecting prisoners with potentially cancerous, well, we know asbestos is cancerous, so cancerous asbestos, comparing its effect on the skin with talc, a major ingredient in J&J's baby powder. The experiments led to scarring, burns, and mental illness in the prisoners who were paid as little as $10. The revelations come as a result of a 2020 settlement that ordered the company to pay a group of black women $2.5 billion. Talcum powder is blamed for women's ovarian cancer and directly linked to the Johnson & Johnson product. What do we think about this?
Well, sorry.
No, I was just going to think, I know this happened over 50 years ago. We're talking about 12, I think it was 12. Yeah, I think it was a dozen men that was incarcerated, probably not knowing what they're really getting into, right? They're saying they're going to pay them for this experiment, but not maybe giving them the truth. And I think this is very disgusting. And I'm shocked that it took this long. We're talking decades before all this information is coming to life where we can really see what was going on back then. And their families should be compensated.
$10 in exchange for your mental health, $10 in exchange for ovarian cancer, $10 in exchange for potentially your life is so disgraceful to know. And so and 50 years, we talk about 50 years is not that long ago. 50 years was, it kind of feels like it was just yesterday. 50 years is not that long ago. And this really is what made a lot of people, black people namely, really afraid to get the COVID-19 vaccine because of Johnson & Johnson's name being attached to it. Knowing this is all things that they tried to make so many people say, well, no, Johnson & Johnson, it's no. Johnson & Johnson, if you knew that you did this, because this is not new news. If Johnson & Johnson knew that they did this, they should not have entered in the COVID-19 vaccine game, because you made so many people afraid of getting the vaccine because of the attachment to Johnson & Johnson. And so, of course, Romeo, like you said, we're not shocked at this, but it's just, I really wish that Johnson & Johnson would have stayed away from the vaccine game. That's just how I feel about the company.
Yeah, and I think black community and people of color supported Johnson & Johnson for years, right? Hearing the rumors, was this really true or not, but they still support and put a lot of money within their pocket. So they definitely owe a check to a lot of people, and they have to be responsible and held responsible for what they did.
And there's a name for this. I want us all to know that this is called medical racism, and it's like a present tense threat. Medical racism happens all the time. It's why black females and their maternity rates, their death rates with their children are so high. Serena Williams, richest, most powerful black woman athlete in the world, she was the victim of medical racism. So please be your own advocate, because unfortunately, they're still being taught this in schools today.
Yeah, that's true.